Hello everyone. In today's video we shall cover the next aspect of pharmacology, that is pharmacodynamics. As we have seen in the introduction of pharmacology that pharmacology basically involves two main aspects, that is pharmacokinetics, that is what the body does to the drug, and the second one is the pharmacodynamics, that is what the drug exactly is doing to the body, okay, as to what are the types of actions which are shown by a particular drug, how exactly it interacts with the biomolecules in the body, and what is the action or what type of effects a particular drug shows. Not only what effects but how those effects are produced, that is also equally important. The mechanism of action of a particular drug is equally important. In the olden days it was not very well understood as to how the particular drug acts, but nowadays it's very clear that how exactly most of the drugs are producing their action, where exactly it is binding to, how it is interacting, what changes it is producing, and as a result of which how the signal is being carried, and exactly what kind of effect is shown by that particular drug. Okay, so let's start with the pharmacodynamics, that is what the drug does to the body. Okay, so basically here we are studying basically the drug effects. Okay, so here drug effects in the sense not only what actions are seen but complete action effect sequence. Okay, exactly what actions are being produced and how that action is getting produced. So what is the sequence of events which are taking place, or what is the dose effect relationship, that is depending upon the dose how the effect of a particular drug can be altered. Okay, not only these but it also involves a modification of action of one particular drug by another drug. So this is also studied under pharmacodynamics. Okay, so how one drug can alter the action of other drugs, whether it is beneficial, whether it is harmful, or whether it does not make any difference. So such kind of modification of actions also are part of the pharmacodynamics. Now coming to the first part, that is the principles of drug action. Okay, so there are certain principles based on which you can say that most of the types of drugs will produce the action. Okay, so now exactly when a drug it enters your body and it produces a particular effect, it's not necessary that it will impart a new function into your body. It's not that the drug will produce a totally a new effect. Okay, most of the cases except those in which the drug alters the genes, there are certain drugs which can alter the genes. So excepting these, most of the drugs they do not impart any new function to any of the systems of the body or organ or cells of the body. Only what they do is they alter the pace of ongoing activity. Whatever is the normal function of those cells, most of the cases that process, the pace of it, maybe the speed of it will be altered. Either it will be made faster or slower, or it will be inhibited. Okay, so new functions are not produced by the drugs in most of the cases. Okay, now let us see what are the different principles of drug action, or what are the different types of actions a particular drug can be producing. So there are different categories into which you can broadly divide them into. The first one is the stimulation. Okay, so stimulation, as the name implies, it refers to the selective enhancement of the level of activity of the specialized cells. Okay, so already whatever activity shown by those particular types of cells on which your drug is acting, so their activity is enhanced. Say for example adrenaline, this is quite common, you must have studied this. Okay, so adrenaline, which is a neurotransmitter at the sympathetic system. Okay, so it stimulates the heart, is what you all must have studied. The sympathetic system it supplies the heart, and when sympathetic system is stimulated, it stimulates the heart. It increases the heart rate and the force of contraction. Now what produces that? Sympathetic system, it releases the neurotransmitter, that is adrenaline, and that acts on the heart to stimulate it. So here heart's normal function is to contract, right? It contracts. The cardiac muscles, they contract. Even heart rate. Okay, so your heart beats at a particular rate, right? Normally it is 70 to 72 is the normal heart rate per minute. Okay, so what adrenaline is doing is it can stimulate the heart. It can increase its activity. Okay, so the level of activity is enhanced by adrenaline. Same way below pilocarpine. It can stimulate the salivary glands. So normally salivary glands, they continuously produce the saliva, right? But when pilocarpine is given, it will stimulate the salivary glands to produce more saliva. Okay, so this is to do with the stimulation. However, sometimes the stimulation, excessive stimulation, it may be followed by depression of that particular function. So initially it will show stimulation of the action, but ultimately, after a prolonged stimulation, it may result in the depression. Say for example, high doses of picrodoxin. Picrodoxin is a CNS stimulant drug. It stimulates the CNS. Okay, so it will produce the convulsions, which may be followed by coma or respiratory depression. So initially the action was a stimulant one, but later on it has concluded into the depressive type of functions. Okay, then the next type of action which the drugs may be producing is depression. That means diminution or decrease of the activity of specialized cell. This is exactly opposite to that of the stimulation. Say for example, barbiturates, they depress the CNS, they produce CNS depressant action. Quinidine, it depresses the heart. Okay, then there are certain drugs which produce both the types of action. Okay, now we have so far seen two types of actions, stimulation and the depression. But there are certain drugs which can produce both the type of actions. They may produce stimulation in one type of cells, but they may depress some other types of cells. Okay, that means a particular drug you cannot categorize as only a stimulant. You just can't broadly go on classifying the drugs depending upon whether it is a stimulant one or whether it is a depressant one. You can't make a generalization. The best example over here is acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter at the parasympathetic system. So this stimulates the intestinal smooth muscles. So smooth muscles in the intestines, it stimulates, it enhances their activity so that the peristaltic movement of your GI tract is increased. But at the same time, ACH can also depress the SA node, which is responsible for the impulse generation. It's the pacemaker of the heart, right, which generates the impulse. So SA node is depressed. So as a result of this, the rate of generation of impulses will be slowed down and the heart rate will be slowed down by acetylcholine. So it's a type of drug which is producing both the types of action. So you cannot make a generalized statement about a particular drug that ACH is only a stimulant drug or it is only a depressant drug. Okay, so likewise this may be true for many of the drugs which may stimulate some type of cells, but it may depress some other types of cells. Okay, then the next type of action which may be produced is the irritation. Okay, now irritation actually it's a non-selective noxious effect and it is particularly applicable to less specialized cells, that is either epithelium or connective tissue. Now, mild irritation of a particular type of cells, it may result in stimulation of the functions which is associated with that particular type of cell or that particular type of tissues. Say for example, bitters, they increase the salivary or gastric secretions. Counter irritants, these are the type of drugs when you rub it on a particular area, they increase the blood flow into that particular area. So here mild irritant property, it may enhance some kind of function in that particular area, but strong irritation, that may be quite dangerous sometimes. Okay, because strong irritation, it may result in inflammation or corrosion or necrosis of that tissue may take place. The cells of that particular tissue may die, or some morphological damage may also take place, and ultimately all these actions may result in diminution or loss of, even loss of function of those particular cells may also be seen if that damage is quite severe. Okay, so this is irritation, which is not applicable to most of the drugs. Very few drugs show mild irritant action. And the next type of action which can be produced by a drug is, or the next principle is the replacement. Okay, so as the name implies, this refers to the use of natural metabolites or the hormones or their congeners in deficiency state. Okay, for example, in case of the deficiency in hormones, the hormone therapy has to be given. Okay, or say some natural metabolites, if they are deficient, you may have to supply them. Okay, say for example, levodopa is used in the treatment of Parkinsonism. Okay, levodopa, as we have already seen in the metabolism also, it's a prodrug which gets activated to dopamine. Dopamine is actually the deficient in Parkinsonism or Parkinson's disease. So at that time, in this particular condition, dopamine can be given. Actually, it's a catecholamine which is deficient, because the dopaminergic system is less active in this particular system. So there is an imbalance actually between the dopaminergic and the cholinergic system. Okay, so here you may have to administer dopamine, but since dopamine it cannot cross the blood-brain barrier, it is given in the form of levodopa. It's a precursor actually. Then next example is insulin in case of diabetes mellitus. So diabetes mellitus, it is due to the deficiency of this insulin, less levels of insulin. Okay, so that's the reason why the blood glucose levels are increased. So in that case, you may have to administer insulin to such patients. Those patients who are suffering from anemia is the next example. Okay, wherein the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood, it is lower. So in certain cases it may be a iron deficiency anemia. That's one of the type of anemia. So in that case you may have to administer the iron supplements to that particular person to make up the whatever loss or whatever deficiency is produced in that particular person, which is responsible for the anemia. So this is to do with the replacement principle of the action. The next one is the cytotoxic action. So as the name implies, under this action your drug is toxic to certain types of cells. Okay, so this is a selective type of cytotoxic action, which is maybe against the invading microorganisms or the cancerous cells. Okay, so here your drug is supposed to target the foreign microorganisms or the cancerous cells which are growing. These are your own cells, but they are growing in an uncontrollable manner. Okay, so you have to selectively kill these without affecting the host cells. Okay, so these are the type of actions which are produced by certain drugs to target the foreign substance or the cancerous cells. So to tackle the infections or the neoplasm. Say for example, antibiotics like penicillin or chloroquine, or the anti-cancer drug like cyclophosphamide. Okay, so these are the examples which act by this particular action, cytotoxic action. Okay, then coming to the mechanism of drug action. Okay, so what are the different types of mechanisms by which the drugs may act? Okay, now only a few of the drugs are available which actually act because of their simple physical or chemical property. Okay, like say for example, bulk laxatives, that is Isfagula, it acts because of its physical mass. Petroleum jelly because of the physical form or opacity. Para-aminobenzoic acid, it acts by absorption of the UV rays. Activated charcoal, its adsorbent property, it's a surface property which is responsible for the mechanism of the action. Then the mannitol or magnesium sulfate, it's the osmotic property of that particular drug which is responsible. Then 131 iodine, it's a radioactive property of that particular substance which is responsible for the action. Antacid, they neutralize the gastric HCl. That's how they help in the reducing the acidity. Then potassium permanganate, its oxidizing property is responsible for its action. Then EDTA, it chelates the heavy metal. Cholestyramine, it sequesters the cholesterol. So these are some of the mechanisms which have been quoted over here. So there are very few examples you can say that actually the physical and the chemical property of the drug is actually responsible for the action. Okay, but majority of the drugs, most of the drugs, they produce their effects by interacting with certain target biomolecules in your body, which are mostly a protein. Okay, as we are all aware that there are several proteins in the body, they have multiple functions. Okay, so most of the drugs, they act by interacting with these biomolecules and they alter their activity in such a way that the action produced by those particular macromolecules or biomolecules or those particular types of proteins, so their actions are altered. So this is the most important mechanism by which most of the drugs act. They act by interacting with certain biomolecules. Okay, so major categories of the biomolecules which actually your drugs will act on and they will alter their actions is the enzymes or the ion channels or the transporters or the receptors. These are the four major categories into which you can divide these biomolecules into, or basically these are all protein in nature. Okay, so basically these are the four categories onto which your drug will act and they will alter their functions in such a way that it will produce a desired action. Okay, so also there are certain example colchicines or texanes. Texanes bind to these structural protein tubulins, or on the nucleic acid also drugs like alkylating agent will bind to the nucleic acids also. Okay, it's not necessary that all of the drugs will bind to only these structures. Okay, it may bind to certain cellular components also to alter the actions of them. Okay, now let us consider all of these targets of your drug one by one. So first one is the enzymes. The most important biomolecule with which the drug can bind is the enzyme, because almost all the biological reactions which are taking place, these are basically under the catalytic influence of certain enzymes. So enzymes, they catalyze certain reactions, so biological reactions which are taking. You must have studied several pathways and cycles in your biochemistry. So all of them, any particular reaction if you take, it is catalyzed by a specific type of enzyme. Okay, so particular enzyme may be responsible for a particular reaction. Also under metabolism also we have seen several enzymes are involved over there. Okay, so enzymes become a very important target for the drug action. Now what can your drug do to these enzymes is either they can increase or decrease the rate of enzymatically mediated reactions. So by acting on these enzymes, either the reaction which that particular enzyme is catalyzing, either its rate can be increased or it can be decreased. Okay, now this stimulation of the enzyme, okay, that is increase in the activity of the enzyme, it is basically relevant to only some of the natural metabolites. Okay, so for example pyridoxine, it acts as a cofactor and enhances the activity of decarboxylase activity. Okay, basically drugs, they do not stimulate the enzyme, that is they do not increase the rate with which it is catalyzing the reaction. It hardly happens that a particular drug may enhance the action of a particular enzyme. Okay, whereas induction can take place. Induction is something different than the stimulation. Induction meaning the synthesis of the enzyme is enhanced over here. Okay, so it's here only the number of enzymes are increasing, but here the rate of reaction is not changed over here in this case. Only those cases in which the enzymes are stimulated, in that case the rate of reaction will increase. Say for example, these enzymes, it may be stimulated by your drug acting through certain receptors and the second messenger. Say for example, adrenaline, it stimulates the hepatic glycogen phosphorylase through beta receptors. So beta receptors are stimulated by adrenaline, okay, and this is the second messenger, cyclic AMP. So this is actually carrying the signal, and ultimately it will result in hepatic glycogen phosphorylase stimulation. Its activity is enhanced. Okay. Now stimulation of an enzyme, it increases its affinity for the substrate. So what do you mean by stimulation of a particular enzyme? Here the affinity for the substrate actually which is acting on which your enzyme is acting, and it is resulting in production of certain product. So its affinity towards that particular substrate is enhanced. Okay, so that here the rate constant of the reaction is lowered down. Km is lowered down. The value of Km is lowered down over here. Okay, and on the contrary, enzyme induction, as I've told earlier, it is increase in the synthesis of a particular enzyme. So here you cannot say that it is a stimulation, because here Km does not change like what is happening over here. Km is lowered when the rate of the reaction is enhanced. Okay, so many of the drugs, as we have already covered under the metabolism part, they can induce the microsomal enzyme. That is, it enhances the activity of the enzyme by increasing the synthesis of the enzyme, but the rate of reaction may not be changed. Then clinically, this is very important. Inhibition of the enzymes. This is the most common mode. Rather than stimulation of any enzyme, inhibition of the enzymes is the most important mode of the drug action. Stimulation can be done by the endogenous substances or endogenous metabolites which are generated, okay, or those which act as the cofactors. But inhibition of a particular enzyme, yes, it can be produced by a particular drug. Okay, say for example, this figure depicts the enzyme. This is your enzyme, right? So on the enzyme there will be a site at which your substrate will bind to, and ultimately this enzyme will convert this particular substrate into the product. Product will be generated according to what type of reaction this enzyme is catalyzing. Okay. Now when a inhibitor is added over here, say for example, you administer a particular drug which can inhibit this particular enzyme. So what will happen? The activity of this enzyme will be stopped. This inhibitor, instead of your substrate, your inhibitor will go and bind to your enzyme, and it will inhibit its activity. That enzyme will not be able to catalyze this particular reaction. So what will happen? Either no product will be generated, this product will not be generated, or some product which is non-functional will be generated. So actual product, it has some function, but there may be some other products which are generated which will not produce that type of function which is actually produced by the product which is produced by the reaction which is catalyzed by this particular enzyme. Okay, so this is to do with the enzyme inhibition. Now let us see what are the types of inhibition of a particular enzyme. Basically, there can be two types of inhibition of the enzymes: the non-specific inhibition and the specific inhibition. Okay, now let us consider what is non-specific inhibition. Okay, so there are certain chemicals and drugs which are able to denature the proteins. Okay, so proteins will be denatured, as a result of which they produce the loss of function. So enzymes, these are also proteins, right? Okay, so here what is happening, your drug, it is denaturing the protein, it is denaturing the enzyme. They alter the tertiary structure of a particular enzyme. Okay, so when that drug encounters a particular enzyme or any enzyme, it may not be specific. Okay, so here it is non-specific inhibition. That means whatever enzyme they will come in contact with, that particular enzyme will get denatured. There will be change in their tertiary structure, as a result of which it will inhibit the enzyme. It will not identify which is that enzyme. Whatever enzyme they will come in contact with, it will start inhibiting it. It will start denaturing. The change in their structure will result in change in the activity of that particular enzyme. So it will result in inhibition of the enzyme. This is known as non-specific because it is not identified. It is not specifically inhibiting a particular type of enzyme. Okay, but whichever enzyme they will come in contact with, all will be inhibited. So examples of non-specific inhibitors are heavy metal salts or strong acids, alkalis, then alcohols, then formaldehyde, phenol. All of these inhibit the enzymes non-specifically. That is, they can inhibit any type of enzyme. It will not keep on identifying which is that enzyme, or it will not selectively inhibit only certain types of enzymes. So these type of inhibitors can be quite dangerous because if you use systemically, it will start inhibiting all the types of enzymes. So you may want our drug to particularly inhibit a particular type of reaction, right? So in that case, this particular type of inhibition will not serve any purpose, right? So this one is very important for us. Okay, so your drug, when it inhibits a specific type of enzyme, that inhibition is known as specific inhibition. So many of the drugs, they can inhibit a particular type of enzyme without affecting the other enzymes. Okay, so now again this specific inhibition can again be divided into two types, that is competitive inhibition or non-competitive inhibition. Okay, coming to the first one, that is competitive inhibition. So as the name implies, there is a competition which is involved over here. Okay, so there will be a competition between whom? The actual substrate for your enzyme and the inhibitor. Both of these will compete for the same site on your enzyme. Okay, so this is a competitive type of inhibition, meaning it will inhibit the enzyme only in presence of this substrate. So there will be a competition between the two for the same site. So since the inhibitor, if it has more affinity, it will itself bind to this site. So since this inhibitor, it does not produce the necessary conformational changes, or it will rather inhibit the enzyme. It will change the enzyme into such a way that it will not be able to produce the product, or maybe some non-functional products may be generated. Okay, so this type of inhibition is the competitive inhibition. So here both the substrate and the inhibitor, they compete with each other for the same site, same binding site on the enzyme. Okay, now again this competitive type of inhibition is divided into two subtypes, equilibrium type and the non-equilibrium type. Now let us see what is this equilibrium type. Okay, so here the drug, it is similar to your substrate structurally. So that's the reason why there may be competition between the two. Okay, so both of them will try to bind to the same type of or the same site on your enzyme, so that whatever product, either the product will not be formed or the non-functional product will be formed. Now since the inhibitors, they will act on certain enzymes. Okay, so certain number of enzymes. If a particular type of enzyme, if you consider, a particular number of enzymes will be inhibited by this inhibitor, but others are still available. So they will achieve a new equilibrium. There will be a new equilibrium in presence of a particular drug. So here equilibrium is maintained over here in this particular type of condition. Now such type of inhibitors, they will increase the Km, but the Vmax, it will remain unchanged in this particular situation. Okay, so what will happen is a higher concentration of your substrate, it may be required. Now supposing if you increase the concentration of your substrate, okay, like say for example this one, inhibitor is present, so this enzyme will get inhibited and a new equilibrium will be set up. But supposing if you increase the concentration of this substrate, much more concentration than your inhibitor, then what will happen? It can displace the inhibitor from that binding site. Okay, by increasing the substrate concentration to a sufficient level, you can displace the inhibitor. Okay, so that you can reactivate that particular enzyme which is inactivated. Okay, so this inhibition is surmountable. By increasing the concentration of your substrate, you can reverse the inhibition of that enzyme which has taken place. Now the example of this equilibrium type of inhibition, specific inhibition, these includes physostigmine and neostigmine. These are the competitive inhibitors. Okay, so these will inhibit the enzyme cholinesterase. Actual substrate for this cholinesterase is acetylcholine. So cholinesterase is an enzyme which hydrolyzes the acetylcholine. But physostigmine and neostigmine, these are the competitive inhibitors, equilibrium type of inhibitors these are. So these can inhibit the enzyme cholinesterase and metabolism of ACH can be inhibited. But if you increase the concentration of the ACH, this inhibition is surmountable. Similarly, there are some more examples which are quoted over here. Allopurinol, it competes with hypoxanthine for the enzyme xanthine oxidase. Okay. Then carbidopa and methyl dopa, these compete with levodopa for dopa decarboxylase. Okay. Then captopril, this competes with the angiotensin 1 for the enzyme ACE, that is angiotensin converting enzyme. So the first ones are the inhibitors of these particular enzymes, and these are their actual substrates. Okay. So the second type of the inhibition is the non-equilibrium type. Okay, competitive type of inhibition, it is divided into two subtypes, that is equilibrium type and the non-equilibrium type. Now here in this particular situation, non-equilibrium, meaning here your drug will react with the binding site of the substrate on that enzyme, and this binding will be in the form of strong covalent binds, or this particular binding will be done with a very high affinity for that particular enzyme. It will have a very high affinity as compared to your normal substrate. Okay, so this binding, that strong covalent binding or binding with high affinity, will be such that your normal substrate, it cannot displace the inhibitor. No matter how much you increase the concentration of your normal substrate, that normal substrate will not be able to displace the inhibitor. In case of equilibrium type, what we have seen? We have seen that increase in the concentration of the normal substrate, it can displace the inhibitor and it can reactivate the enzyme. The inhibition is surmountable, but that is not the case over here, because the inhibitor binds either with the strong covalent bonds or it can bind to your enzyme with very high affinity. Okay, so examples over here include organophosphates. They react covalently with the esteratic site. This is your binding site for the substrate. So it binds with that esteratic site of the enzyme cholinesterase covalently. So it inhibits organophosphates. They inhibit the enzyme cholinesterase irreversibly. In the previous case, in the equilibrium type, we have seen neostigmine, physostigmine. These are the equilibrium type of inhibitors. That is, if you increase the concentration, the inhibition is surmountable, or it is a reversible type of inhibition. But this is an irreversible type of inhibition. Similarly, methotrexate, Now here this methotrexate, it has 50,000 times higher affinity for the enzyme dihydrofolate reductase as compared to normal substrate dihydrofolic acid. Okay, so this will not be able to replace the inhibitor. Okay, DHFA will not be able, even if you increase the concentration, since the affinity of methotrexate towards this enzyme is very high, your normal substrate will not be able to displace it. Okay, so these are some of the examples. Now in this particular situation, if you consider the rate of the reaction, Km over here in this situation is increased and the Vmax is reduced. Then coming to the second type of specific inhibition, the first one was competitive inhibition, is what we have seen when there is a competition between the substrate and the inhibitor for the same site, and that can be of two types, equilibrium type and non-equilibrium type. Now coming to the second type of specific type of enzyme inhibition, that is non-competitive inhibition. So as the name implies, there is no competition between the substrate and the inhibitor. Now here in this case, substrate and inhibitor both are binding to the same site. But in case of non-competitive inhibitor, maybe this inhibitor instead of here, it may be binding somewhere over here. So its binding site may be different from that of your substrate. Okay, so that's why there is no competition between the two for the same site. Okay, so this type of inhibition is known as non-competitive inhibitor, where the inhibitor reacts with the adjacent site and not with the catalytic site, where exactly your normal substrate is binding to. Okay, so here though the inhibitor is not binding to the actual binding site of your substrate, but it will alter the enzyme in such a way that it will lose its function, it will lose its catalytic property. Now in this particular situation, the Km of the reaction remains unchanged, but the Vmax is reduced. Now the examples of non-competitive inhibition includes the carbonic anhydrase, over here acetazolamide, it's a non-competitive inhibitor. Okay, in case of COX, cyclooxygenase, aspirin and indomethacin, they inhibit the enzyme non-competitively. Okay, then omeprazole, it can inhibit the proton pump H plus K plus ATPase. Okay, then digoxin, it can inhibit the sodium potassium ADPase. So these are some of the examples of non-competitive inhibitors, wherein the actual substrate for these enzymes, there won't be any competition between these particular drugs and the normal substrate. The binding site of these inhibitors will be different other than the substrate binding site on the enzyme. Okay, so this is to do with the actions of your drug on the enzymes. Now next target molecule for your drugs are ion channels. Okay, so as we all are aware of, the proteins also, the proteins which are present in most of your membranes, they act as ion channels. Now ion channels, why channels are required for ions? Because ions cannot cross the biological membrane. Any substance which has a charge, it cannot cross the biological membrane, is what we have seen. Anything which is unionized in nature, that can cross the membrane, provided it is highly lipophilic in nature. Okay, now how will ions cross the membrane then? Sodium ions, calcium ions, potassium ions, chloride ions. So how they will cross your membrane? So for that matter, there are specialized channels which are available. As we have seen that integral proteins, they traverse the membrane. So they form certain subunits, and in the middle of that a pore will be there, aqueous pore will be there. So usually it will be closed, and whenever required it will open, so that the ions will flow through. Okay, so these movement of these ions also it is a very important physiological aspects which may change the potential across the membrane, and which will be responsible for carrying certain signals. Okay, so by change in the concentration of these ions across the membrane, or this particular ions, because of the movements, they may be activating certain transducer mechanisms. Okay, so drugs can affect these ion channels either through specific receptors on these particular ion channels or by directly binding to the channels or affecting the movement across it. Okay, so either directly it will modulate, change the flow of the ions, or they will act on the certain receptors, and in turn it will make the changes in the movement of those ions across the membrane. Okay, so there are few examples which are quoted over here. One important example is a local anesthetic, okay, which will stabilize your sodium ion channels in your neuronal membrane. Okay, so because of this the sodium ions will not be able to flow. Then another example is quinidine. It blocks the myocardial sodium channels, that is your in your cardiac muscles, the sodium channels which are located, so they can be blocked. Nifedipine, it blocks the L type of voltage sensitive calcium channels. Amiloride, this inhibits the renal epithelial sodium channels in the kidneys. Phenytoin, it modulates the voltage sensitive neuronal sodium channels in the neuronal membrane. Okay, so this is the picture which makes it more clearer. So any blocker which can inhibit the movement of the substance across the ionic channel, so that can inhibit the movement of a particular ion. Normally what happens is, normal substrate, it will bind to this ion channel. So what will happen, these subunits which are present, they will move apart. Actually this is only a two-dimensional picture which is shown. Actually these particular proteins which cross the entire membrane, they have an internal pore in between. Aqueous channel is present and it is surrounded by these proteins, okay, in the form of subunits. So any substance which is able to open this channel, when it binds, the subunits will move apart and ions will flow through across the membrane. They cannot cross over here because they are charged in nature. So any blocker which can block this particular channel, it will prevent the opening of the channel. So ions will not be able to flow through. Or there are certain modulators which can bind to this channel and open it, so that it will promote the movement of ions across the membrane. So either ways it is possible. Either it can be blocked, the movement of the ions can either be inhibited or it can be promoted. Either ways it is possible. Okay. Now it depends upon the type of drugs. Okay. The next target is the transporters. Okay. As we have already seen under the membrane transport, okay, under the absorption part, before the absorption we have considered one part, that is the movement of a particular drug across the membrane, how exactly the drugs are crossing the membrane. So under that we have seen two processes wherein specialized transporters are involved. Okay, so one is the facilitated diffusion, which is a passive process, but passive means the drug will cross the membrane to move from area of high concentration to area of low concentration, but it cannot cross the membrane as such. It requires the help of certain transporters. So membrane proteins will act as the transporters and they will transfer the drug from one side of the membrane to the other side of the membrane. So this is facilitated type of diffusion. Here energy is not required. Okay, so it's a passive process. Whereas there are certain other processes called as active transport, wherein again a transporter is involved to help the substance move from the area of low concentration to area of higher concentration. Okay, so here it is not downhill process, but it is uphill process. Okay, so here it is against the concentration gradient, so energy is required. So these type of processes require specialized transporters. So there are special carriers which help your drug to move from one side of the membrane to other side of the membrane. So these make use of the carriers, the solute carriers, SLC class of transporters may be involved. So many drugs are there which can interact with these transporters. Okay, either they can stimulate these transporters or inhibit these transporters, so they can change the pace of movement of substance from one side of the membrane to other side of the membrane. Okay, so these are some of the examples. Fluoxetine, these inhibit the reuptake of 5-HT. So 5-HT which is released in the cleft, its reuptake, its re-entry inside the axon, that is inhibited by inhibiting this particular transporter, serotonin transporter. This is specifically meant for reuptake of 5-HT. So it can be inhibited by fluoxetine. Then amphetamines, these can selectively block the dopamine reuptake in the brain by acting on this transporter, dopamine transporter. Okay, so specific drug can act on specific transporters. Then furosemide, which is a diuretic, it inhibits the transporter sodium potassium 2 chloride co-transporter. Okay, so this is a transporter which is responsible for movement of these ions, sodium 1 potassium and 2 chloride ions in one particular direction in loop of Henle. So that can be inhibited by furosemide. Then probenecid, this example also we have considered earlier in the excretion part, the tubular secretion and reabsorption of these uric acid and the penicillin, it is altered by probenecid. Okay, so secretion of penicillin is inhibited and reabsorption of uric acid is inhibited by probenecid. Okay, by interacting with the OAT, that is organic anion transporter. Okay, so this is a picture which depicts the transporters. So any substrate can move across the membrane with the help of transporter, may it be facilitated diffusion or active transport. So this transporter will help a particular substrate to move across the membrane. But if you administer an inhibitor, your drug can act as an inhibitor of this transporter. So what will happen? It will inhibit the transporter, as a result of which this transporter will not be able to transport this substance across the membrane. It will stay on this side. It will not be able to cross the membrane because the transporters are inhibited by your drug. Okay. Then next is the receptor. Now actually the largest number of drugs, they do not bind directly to these proteins which we have discussed so far, that is enzymes or channels or transporters or structural proteins or some other biomolecules. So your drug may not directly bind to these proteins, but instead they will act through specific macromolecular structure on these biomolecules. Okay, so that particular structure on these biomolecules through which your drug is interacting with, that particular site is known as a receptor. Okay, so it's a regulatory macromolecule or the site on these with which your drug is interacting. So that is known as a receptor. So how you can define a receptor? Okay, receptor, it is defined as a macromolecule or binding site which is located on the surface, either on the surface or inside the effector cells, that serve to recognize the signal molecule or the drug and initiate the response to it. Okay, but it itself does not have any other function. So as such, receptor, it is a structure, it is a macromolecule or a binding site on any of these, maybe on the enzyme or maybe on the channel, okay, or maybe on the transporter. There may be some site at which your drug will act. It will have a particular binding site. So that binding site or specialized macromolecules will be present. So this will act as a receptor. So what will you do when your drug binds to this receptor? It will identify that and it will process the signal, but as such your receptor does not have any function. It is there, it is just a structure which is present over there, okay, on your effector organ. Okay. Some substance should come, that is maybe your drug, it should come and bind to this receptor. It should carry some signal, it will bind to that receptor. When it is stimulated or inhibited, it will process some signaling pathways which will be ultimately responsible for the action. Okay, so basically the proteins, maybe this is an example of proteins which is present in the membrane. Say for example, this is your effector cell onto which this receptor is present. So either a particular substance will come and bind to this receptor. So as a result of binding of this, there may be some structural changes, conformational changes which may take place in this receptor. Ultimately, whatever signal this particular substance has brought, that will be transduced with the help of certain transducer mechanisms, and because of these processes there may be multiple steps which are involved over here. Okay, so this transducer mechanism will ultimately carry the signal towards the effector, which may be present inside the cell or may be present on the surface of the cell. Okay, so this is to do with the receptor, and this may be your drug which is binding to this receptor. Now there are certain terms which you should keep in mind when there is a drug receptor interaction. Okay, so as we have seen over here, apart from this there are some more substances which are shown over here, right? So your drug either may bind to your receptor, stimulate it, or your drug may also act as a competitive antagonist. It may antagonize your receptor. Okay, this is your agonist which actually binds to the receptor, but your drug may compete with it for the same site, or your drug may act as a non-competitive antagonist also. So there are several aspects which can take place. So the terms which should be kept in mind over here are agonist, inverse agonist, antagonist, partial agonist and ligand. Okay, now let us see one by one all of this. So coming to the first one, that is the agonist. Now let us see what an agonist is. The agonist, it is an agent which activates a particular receptor. This one, it activates the receptor to produce an effect similar to that of the physiological signal molecule. Okay, say for example, if the normal physiological molecule over here was ACH. Okay, say ACH is your, no, it is normally present in the body. So this may be the receptor for ACH. Okay, so your ACH when comes and bind to this receptor, it will stimulate the receptor, transducer mechanisms will take place and it will ultimately produce some action. But your drug may act as an agonist. That is, it may have the affinity for this binding site. Okay, it itself can also bind to the receptor and produce the action same as that of ACH. Okay, say for example, betanicol, methacholine, these are the examples of cholinergic agonists. They can also bind to the receptor and stimulate the receptor, cholinergic receptor. Okay, so your drug can act as an agonist. That is, it can bind to the receptor, activate the receptor. That's very important. It activates means it has affinity to bind towards that receptor, plus it has intrinsic activity. That is, it can stimulate the receptor, which is similar to the normal physiological signaling molecules. Okay, then next is inverse agonist. Okay, now inverse agonist, as the name clearly implies, something which is opposite to your agonist action. Okay, so this is an agent which activates the receptor to produce the effect in the opposite direction to that of the agonist. Okay, so it will bind to the receptor, but it will produce the action in such a way which will be opposite to that of the agonist. Okay, so whatever action agonist is producing, say depression of the heart, so this inverse agonist, when it binds to the receptor, it will produce stimulation of the heart. Okay, so that is a inverse agonist. The next one is the antagonist. Okay, so antagonist is something which can prevent the action of agonist on the receptor or the subsequent response, but it does not have any effects on its own. Whereas in case of inverse agonist, what we have seen, it can bind to the receptor and stimulate the receptor, but in the opposite direction the actions will be produced, right? But here antagonist, it can bind to the receptor. These are the ones, the two types, competitive antagonist and non-competitive. They can bind to the receptor, but they cannot produce any action. Okay, so they will simply block the receptor. These type of drugs are known as blockers. They can block the action of the agonist. Okay, such type of drugs are known as antagonist. Okay, say for example, in case of acetylcholine, atropine is the blocker. Okay, so it can block the actions of acetylcholine. Then partial agonist. Okay, so as the name implies, it's an agonist but partial. Okay, so this is an agent which activates the receptor to reduce submaximal effect. Okay, so maximum effect which is shown by the agonist, that much effect will not be produced by the partial agonist. Okay, but it can antagonize the action of full agonist. So in place of agonist, if the partial agonist bind to your receptor, your agonist will not be able to bind over there, so it will antagonize the actions of the full agonist. Okay, but it itself can partially stimulate that particular receptor, so that submaximal effects can be produced. Then the next one is the ligand. Okay, so the literal meaning of this particular word, it was derived from the Latin word ligare, means to bind. Okay, so any molecule which attaches selectively to a particular type of receptor or to particular sites, that is known as a ligand. So here this particular ligand means it is described in terms of only the affinity. Okay, that is any substance which has affinity towards that particular receptor, that is it can bind to a particular receptor regardless of whether it shows the action or no. For example, agonist, competitive antagonist. Now agonist actually can bind to the receptor and show the effects, but competitive antagonist, it can bind to the receptor but action will not be shown. But both can bind to the receptors, right? Whether the action is shown or not shown, both of them have affinity towards that receptor. So that means both of these are ligands of the same receptor. They both can bind to the receptor. That's why they are known as ligands. Okay. So this is to do with some of the introductory part of the pharmacodynamics, in which we have seen what are the different mechanisms of action or what are the different targets. Okay, so this is the reference. Thank you.